Well, welcome everyone. I hope you enjoyed watching the premiere of the Nexus film, and I'm delighted that we can have a webinar to discuss the production of the film with the researchers, with the young people who contributed, and with the director Chris. So we will have about an hour for a discussion, and this is the first time when the film premiered on YouTube. So please share with your networks, and hopefully we will have a lot more engagement. So if I introduce our panelists, so first Lindsay Dewa, who is working as a researcher in Imperial College London. The director is Chris Godwin, who works for Inner Eye Productions. And we have 4 young people, only 3 of them could, sorry, I'm not very good at counting. So we have Simi, one of the young people joining, Dylan, and Pelumi, who is joining to the discussion. So I would really like everyone to engage and ask questions to the question and ask function on Zoom, and state who you're asking the questions to on the panel. Unfortunately, we haven't got the technology that people can join by voice, but hopefully we can engage just using the Q&A function. And maybe, you know, if I start with Lindsay, so if you could tell us a little bit about your research and how it ended up in a film.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it was way back when in 2020, we had a very fast-paced period, I think, for a lot of people of trying to sort of capture mental health impact from COVID, even despite not really knowing what was going to happen. And I think we knew quite quickly we wanted to do a co-produced mixed method study of a national survey to look at the impact of COVID-19 on young people's mental health, and also do follow-up interviews with young people as well across the country. But we didn't at that point know exactly what we wanted to ask in terms of questions. We wanted to be co-produced. We wanted to ask the general population about what they wanted to focus on. And how people were coping specifically was what was selected as a question that we wanted to delve into. And following that, people were asked questions over a period of time, and we delved into more in-depth questions as well. So that was kind of the snapshot of the research. And the two main findings, I guess, from that potentially is like kickstarted the Nexus sort of focus, was that eating-related coping strategies was one of the most common that we found in the survey, and also that social connection. So actually having connection with peers, having connection with family and friends was actually a protective factor for people's deteriorating mental health. Those people did a lot better having that connection with others than those that didn't. And it was from that, well, it was December 2020 that Chris got in contact and said, I've seen your research, would you like to make a film together? And I was like, yes, please. Yeah, and two a bit years later, here we are. Oh, you're on mute, Agnes.
So that sounds really exciting. It's really exciting for everyone. I suppose it's exciting for a researcher that somebody is interested in your work and believes that it's worthy of a film. So maybe, Chris, you want to continue? What made you interested in this project?
Yeah, so I mean, I make as a production company, you know, we make a lot of films covering mental health issues, and you know, during COVID, I wasn't as busy as I was hoping I would be, as most people were. Filming was very tricky during COVID, and I was interested in exploring new storylines, new subjects, and I came across a radio interview about the impact of COVID on people's mental health broadly. So I started doing a little bit more research, and I came across Lindsay's research. I think she'd done a blog or something. And so I read the blog. I thought, this sounds really, really interesting. I'd really like to make a film about this. So I approached Lindsay, and then I discovered the way that she'd approached this film, approached her research, which was this co-produce methodology. And it kind of felt like a really good way to take that methodology that she'd used in the research and apply that to making a film. So then we brought on the young people, Dylan, Simi, Pelumi, and Elia, who's not here today, and we set about making this film. But the first thing we needed to do before that happened was actually find the funding for it. And I felt that we had a very strong proposition with the co-production element of it, the content, the story that we were going to be potentially telling based on Lindsay's research. And it just felt like it was a very compelling proposition that we could take to the West London NHS Trust, who were really keen and really adopted it very quickly. And then from there, we then approached the Burdett Trust for Nursing, who made up the remainder of the funding, and then we were away. So yeah, it sort of happened really quickly, and I think it happened really quickly because I think from the outset we knew this was a really compelling proposition.
Yeah, it's really good to hear that, and also kind of having ideas kind of put into practice, because sometimes it's really difficult to find funding for things, and then getting the team together. And then I suppose we have a question from the audience, which is probably to all of you. What was the process in coming up with the storyline for the film? And they thought it was beautifully done, so congratulations.
Shall I take that one?
Okay.
So basically the way it happened was that we all met on Zoom. We had about, I think probably in total, probably about 10 sessions. And we just got together and we just threw ideas around that were fundamentally based on the research that Lindsay had come up with. And so we used that as our foundation for building our creative process. And it was like it really was like building blocks. You know, we kind of came up with one idea and then it moved on to another idea. But what we were very clear about from very early on that we wanted to reflect eating disorders. And so that was really the one thing that we had universal agreement on from the outset. And that from there on, we developed the storyline, and that happened over about 3 or 4 sessions, and there were long sessions. I think there were 3-hour sessions, but they really did genuinely fly by. And if I'm honest, you know, before we did this, I was a little bit nervous about doing this approach and involving other people in the creative process. I hadn't really done it this way before, but I think it was really a great collaboration, and I think the film is testimony to that. It's testimony to all of us working together as a collaborative to really develop something that hopefully will move people and ultimately hopefully will lead to some change.
Yeah, well, it's a very powerful film, so hopefully it will have the impact that you have been working to achieve. Kind of asking the young people, and I don't want to pick people up one by one, so please kind of put your hand up. It would be really interesting to hear, why did you want to engage in this project, and how did that feel from your perspective? All right, Dylan, you want to start?
Hi everyone. I think going off what Chris said and how it kind of all happened really organically, and it started based on Lindsay's research, but I think each of the young people involved kind of brought a different element to the story of the film. And I think it is a story that, it's a complex story with multiple themes, and we all had a bit of a push for different things. I work for a local charity called Thrive Teesside, and we're an anti-poverty charity. So we do like one-to-one support for people who are struggling with things like benefit entitlements and debt and stuff like that. And one of my biggest goals for the film was to get that storyline of digital exclusion and digital poverty in there. I think oftentimes people think that all young people are digitally connected, which is definitely not the case. I think there's a bit of a stereotype that all young people are online and can access, social connection online, but not just social connection. It's a bit of an essential now to have the internet when it comes to studying, job searching. The list goes on. It's not a luxury anymore. So I was really passionate about getting that into the film, and to highlight a young person in poverty in a socially deprived community who is also dealing with mental health issues as well, because I think that those two subjects are often interlinked. But I think that was like one of my biggest passions for the film. I don't know if Simi or Pelumi want to add anything on.
Pelumi, do you want to go next, and then Simi after that?
Oh yes, yeah. I guess just adding on to that, I think what I wanted to be shown in the movie was just about like representation and making sure that like we were capturing the true voices of young people, and because the story is based with male eating disorders, and we don't really hear that and we don't really see that. And with the other characters, I guess we just wanted, and I just wanted it to be as authentic as possible at that time, at the beginning of COVID. And I think it was really good to see that representation, and to see that diversity, and to see the power of connections through that, and show the audience that like, representation in this way. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really raised lots of really important connections. So the poverty and the anxiety around COVID was very well portrayed, and I think someone who's been working in eating disorders for a long time, I think even within the field, sometimes we miss the importance of anxiety and the social isolation contributing to the disorder. And what about your kind of experience and perspective, Simi? Why did you get involved, and how did that feel?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I was always very interested in mental health, and obviously seeing we had done a previous symposium about mental health, so that kind of brought us into the project as well. And I think one thing I really liked about it was just the collaboration of ideas from all different people. Like even the four of us all had different things to add. And I think without having different voices, it would be a very different story. So yeah, I think that was probably the best part of it.
That's really nice to hear. There's a question in the audience from Samantha. What was the most rewarding part for you, and how did it affect your current personal lives? Dylan, I put your hand up again.
I think what's really interesting about this project is that we actually made the film during COVID on Zoom. So a lot of the pre-planning and the creation of the film happened while COVID and lockdowns were, taking place. So it was really, we as young people were kind of navigating, our own lives, being in lockdowns and the effects of COVID on our own mental health. So I think for me that the most rewarding part of the process was kind of taking our own stories and our own, voices and putting them into a creative outlet, and to have like a piece of art at the end of it. It was a good way to it was actually a good way to get a lot of stuff off our chest, I think. And we oftentimes we spoke about, our own lives and what we were going through, and working together and in that creative process at the time was a really a really therapeutic and creative thing to do when we were going through it ourselves. And it kind of kept us, it kept me quite sane to have a creative project to do in that time.
Yeah, thank you. Simi?
I think for me, it was very rewarding to see the final product for the first time in December. I think that was like a really great experience, seeing it in the first premiere. And also, I'd say being able to what was I going to say? I've lost my train of thought. But sorry, what was the...
Well, presumably you learned something about filmmaking.
Yeah.
So yeah, that sounds kind of quite exciting in
how
itself.
it affected our lives. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I would say as well, from being in sixth form when we started it, and then being in uni now, it's been like quite a long process, and I think that has been quite interesting to see how we've all changed during the time as well. Yeah, that was what I wanted to say.
Okay. Pelumi, you have your hand up. I know there was a problem with your connection, but you're back.
What's funny about that is that that was what would happen in the meetings because of internet connection. But I think one thing that I would say that I took from the whole creation process was the fact that it was a safe space for us to share our ideas, and for us to be able to bring things to the table and have real discussions, and really flushing things out of okay, this is what we can do, this is how we can explore things. And that felt really safe, and I think that it really allowed us to see a creative process, and yeah, it makes me want to work with everyone again. So fingers crossed we can do that.
Okay. Yeah, actually we have some questions relating to that, so probably I should ask Anna's question next. What's next for Nexus? So are you guys working on another project?
Shall I take this one? We honestly, just because we've reflected on this all week, we've been talking about a trilogy. We've been talking about all sorts connected to next films and things. You know, potential of Matt in the next phase of his life, and even his family members. Maybe we follow the sister and her path, and maybe focus on the mum next. There's so many different complexities to the storyline. But also we've really reflected on, you know, do we need to, certainly from the audience members in our roadshow this week, have been talking about the potential or the need to have almost like a holding area for all of our, you know, insights and connected to the research and resources and things like that, but also sort of a collective resource to be able to take to schools or for workshops, for the workplace. All these generations of discussions have just been so insightful all week that there's so much potential to this, to really have this creative film to generate discussion for change in policy and practice connected to eating disorders, but also potentially future pandemics, the importance of social connection. You know, we only just talked offline before about taking it to Parliament, for example, like trying to make change that way rather than, you know, traditional academic paper route. So I just think there's so much potential with different avenues, and you know, and we also did more on our research as well. So there's so much more to be said and to do. I'm sure everyone else has got thoughts as well, because we talked about it all week.
So definitely this is a start of something rather than finishing at this point. What do you guys hope that the impact of the film will be that's coming from Anna Lawrence Jones from the audience? Dylan and Pelumi. Yeah, I think Dylan, you go first.
I just hope that it maybe encourages young people to reach out if they're struggling, and also to really highlight that importance of social connection and just connection in general. That would probably be one of the more important things for me, is just for young people to watch the film and realize that they're not alone, and you know, that help is out there and help is available, and recovery isn't linear, and, you know, no matter if you're a young person or not, I think anybody can take something from the film. But yeah, I think I hope that it has an impact on young people, and it encourages young people to talk to each other, to talk to their families, to talk to professionals. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really great that you were addressing a lot of stereotypes or stigma around eating disorders, and you know, there is that stereotype that it's a white upper class girls' school problem, and people marry their princes and live happily ever after and grow out of it. And it's unfortunately kind of a myth, which is probably quite convenient for the politicians, because, you know, every single time we raise the importance of eating disorders, particularly kind of the avoidable deaths of young adults, then we have a stop response while we have been invested into CAM's eating disorder services, so it's fine. And it's not fine. A lot of people are struggling in secret. A lot of people struggle with stigma in themselves. Pelumi, you have your hand up, so I should be kind of making a speech.
Yes, I guess what I would like is for people to, like, because I think sometimes seeing things visually really helps you, like, process what's happened. And I feel like because it was so long ago, people maybe not forgot, but people have maybe suppressed things and maybe not, like, dealt with things. And I think it's really important that the film and the power of cinema is like, oh, you get to see something and then you can, like, then, you know, make change, and then hopefully, you know, that can then lend itself to more healing. So yeah.
Yeah. So kind of acknowledging the difficulties that people have gone through, but also kind of challenging stigma. Lindsay, you have your hand up as well. So.
Well, just to add, I mean, Pelumi and Dylan have absolutely nailed it in terms of the actual content of the film and everything they've said. I won't repeat, but absolutely fantastic and exactly how I feel. But I think also how I feel is connecting to sort of the wider researchers out there to actually see film as a potential possibility to actually disseminate your research rather than relying on the traditional routes of academic papers and conferences. I just think there's so much potential with this creative space to actually, stories are so powerful, and I think it really just capture sort of the data in a different way, and it's just much more creative and innovative. But also in terms of co-production as well, in general, I just think, again, opening that discussion, not just one person leading on research and public engagement. I think it's all about co-production, working in partnership and sharing decision making. And I hope that, again, generates discussion for them also to do that in their own practice and research.
Yeah, I agree. Chris?
Yeah, I just had a sort of broader point about the sort of the wider impact of the film. I mean, central to the film, and this was something which we discussed very early on, and is rooted in the research from Lindsay, was the importance of social interactions. And basically, and I hope this is reflected in the film, what the film shows is that the best coping mechanism for young people is each other. And what happened during COVID was, it was this unique situation where suddenly you removed all those connections for young people. And in particular, we see with our main character that as soon as we removed those social connections, his coping mechanism evaporated. And so he then became more seduced by the bulimia, which we imply had been going on for a while before anyway. And things just sort of got steadily worse for him. And so I think there's a real learning there for the future in terms of the importance of those social connections in really helping people and young people navigate a very difficult time in their life. And what COVID did is it kind of highlighted that by removing the ability to connect in person. So I think, whilst this film's about COVID and the era of COVID, I think it's got wider meaning and broader meaning moving forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I must say, when I was watching the film, I was sort of thinking that in the research field of eating disorder, we probably have underestimated this, or maybe we were looking at the wrong things. So I really liked how the relationship with the mother was portrayed. That it was kind of portrayed that quite clearly this was not caused by the mom. So some of these kind of old-fashioned psychodynamic ideas of it must be the mother's fault if there is something wrong with the child, that was really kind of nicely portrayed. And it's also kind of consistent with the research by Robin Dunbar. I don't know whether you're familiar with his work. He has been kind of researching the impact of social contact, friendship, and shared joy. I think that is one of the things that his research highlighted. Things like doing things that make you laugh together. That is really important for people's mental health, and I suppose that's the sort of thing that we probably lost or missed out on during COVID. so I suppose it does kind of raise a lot of questions. Just going back to the impact, we did have a bit of a conversation before starting the webinar that maybe this is a nice way of engaging politicians who don't want to read research papers. So I would completely agree with Lindsay that maybe we should kind of think about telling stories in a way that actually very sensitively but portray the reality of the problem and the complexity of the problem. So yeah, fantastic work. And you guys had a lot of compliments, so it's really wonderful to hear about your involvement. And there was one question, is there anything that you would have done differently? So kind of finishing the project, what have you learned for your next project? Dylan?
I think for me, and this is just me being a bit biased, I think I would have liked to have seen some Northern representation in the film somewhere. Obviously, that's just because I'm from Teesside. But there's always room for, the sequel or the trilogy or the miniseries that we've got planned next time. But no, it's honestly the whole process from start to finish, and it was true co-production. I'm sure many people have been involved in projects in where it hasn't necessarily been true co-production, and it's just ideas are taken, or you don't feel like you've got a real say in the decision-making process. But we truly worked as like a equal team for the film, so I don't think I would have changed anything really, but maybe we can fit somebody from up north in the next one.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, again, it's interesting because probably eating disorders are more common in urban areas, and it's kind of almost counterintuitive, because you kind of think, well, there are more people around you, so you should have more connection, but it's not necessarily as simple as that. But you're absolutely right. We shouldn't kind of think that this is just one kind of elite area of the country kind of thing. So so that is a really important point. There was a question for Chris. So what was the difference between producing the film this way compared to your previous work?
So the main difference was the co-production. So normally the way that I would work is that I'd do lots of interviews with people who've had a lived experience of the pathway that we were reflecting, and then I'd come together with my creative team, and then we would then take it forward from there. So effectively, my creative team suddenly expanded quite significantly with this film, and working with people who don't work in film, who don't sort of on a day-to-day basis write scripts as well. So that would probably be the main difference. But I mean, these guys weren't just involved in the storytelling and the coming up with the actual script. They also got involved in the casting, got involved in the edit as well. Which was quite nerve-wracking for me to show the first cut to everyone, and that's always a really difficult thing, especially in an edit where you become quite close to the material, and when somebody comes in and makes a suggestion or makes a change, your instinct is to kind of fight against it. So that was quite difficult for me to kind of be a bit more open-minded, and there was actually quite a significant change that Alia, who's not here, suggested. She felt that there wasn't enough pressure on family, in terms of the poverty element of the film. And so we actually had to switch one of the scenes. I don't know whether you remember, but in one of the final scenes where the mum is there with all the bills, you see that scene twice in the film. So earlier on, she's there with the bills before she goes up and reprimands Matt for using the iPad. We actually took that from the later scene and put it up earlier, because we wanted to kind of build that pressure of her stressing about the bills and not being able to pay them. So if you look very, very closely, she's actually got a different sweater on when she goes over to open the fridge. But that was a suggestion that Alia had made, and when we put it in, we tried it, it was like, yeah, that works perfectly. So yeah, so I think that would be the main difference. But yeah, but it worked great. I'd do it again, there's no question.
And it sounds that your suggestion, Dylan, about moving to a university, maybe to Newcastle, is already taken up. So for the next film, yeah, I'm really curious to hear about actually the production of the film and casting. So how did you guys do it? What was that like for you?
So the casting would be that we did a search for people, and then we had people that we thought were good. Although actually, in fact, the stage before that was to actually decide on the characters and decide, you know, the ethnicity, age, all those different things. And so there was a discussion initially that should we make Matt, should he be from an ethnic minority? Should he be black? Pelumi felt that that might be sort of representing black people in a way that could be sort of seen as stereotypes, and so we decided that that wasn't the case. I don't know, Pelumi, whether you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I think like looking back, because at that time there was a lot happening within the black community in terms of like the Black Lives Matter movement being re-energized, and I just kind of felt like, because representation is so important, and I kind of just felt for this particular piece of work, I think it was important to see the ethnic minority, or like just being in the way that they were, in the way that the character of Josh and like was, and it was nice to see that represented. And now that, like, fingers crossed, there is a sequel, there is more of an opportunity to dive into his story, and like, and even into all of the character stories, the three friends, and like seeing how they, like, what their lives were like, and how they were like, how their lives were affected. But I think for this particular time, I just kind of felt like I just think it at that time there was just a lot going on, and I just didn't want another thing represented where you see black people in pain. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I suppose that's really a helpful point, because I suppose I was sort of thinking that there is definitely a problem with stigma and eating disorders or any mental disorder in ethnic minority groups, and certainly in clinical samples, they're grossly underrepresented. So yeah, I'm kind of getting excited about your next story. Yeah, and then so did the young people kind of contribute to casting, and what was that like for you? Simi, do you want to say? Or
yeah, I mean, I think in the end there was a couple options, and then we had the like final go ahead. I think we kind of decided who we thought seemed best for each role, and I think it worked quite well in the end. Like I think everyone really fit the role that they were assigned.
Okay. Dylan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think before we even like the characters were casted, I think we did a really good job of knowing what characters we wanted. Like we did a lot of pre-work to make sure that the characters, there was a representation for everybody, or as many people as we could, and we spent a lot of time thinking about the main character, as Pelumi was saying, and I think the hard work kind of happened before the casting, and then it was just lucky that Chris found some, well, it wasn't lucky, but Chris found some fantastic actors, and we, it wasn't hard to approve them as the young people. We were really, really happy with the casting choices.
Okay. Lindsay, you have your hand up?
Oh, it's just one little comment, just the fact that if anyone noticed that Dylan was actually in the film as well. He did it.
What was that like for you? Being
in the scene, I look at it now and I'm like, oh gosh, what, like, why did I agree to do that? But actually going to it was fantastic that we got the opportunity to go down to London and watch the filmmaking process and be involved. I do have a passion for filmmaking and anything creative, so I was really, really happy to get that opportunity to travel down to London from Teesside, and there was two scenes that I got to be there for, which was well, not two scenes, but the scenes in the shop, which is where I think I asked for a pack of cigarettes, which I've never bought a pack of cigarettes in my life for myself anyways. Fantastic experience all around. And then there was the scene where the mother character puts the iPad into the pawn shop as well. I was there for that scene, but it was really, really interesting, and getting to actually meet the actors and make those connections. I really, really appreciated that part of the process.
Yeah, I was wondering actually, because you guys mentioned that you're now at university, so may I ask what you're doing now?
I'm not personally. I do media and communication work for just a small charity in Teesside, but Simi and Pelumi can take that one.
Yeah, I'm doing medicine at uni. Yeah, I just started this year, so it's my first year.
And I hope you are interested in psychiatry and
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we need the next generation early. And Pelumi?
Yeah, I graduated uni. I did computer science at MMU. So like the character could go to Manchester or Newcastle for the next movie. But now what I do is I work for a charity. I do the voice-to-voice role, which is getting service users' opinions about the service and using those opinions to help inform the work that we do. And the charity is called Early Break, based around Greater Manchester. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. It was really interesting. So it kind of sounds like that, apart from having, I suppose, the excitement of contributing to the film, that already had some impact in your own kind of career choices and kind of taking the next steps. Is that fair to say? Or it was already in the pipeline?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely was like by being involved in obviously seeing Lindsay's research and then being involved in stuff after that, I think was really good for me. Like it's made me more interested in mental health, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I think like what this process has shown me is the ability to just like see something through and see, and like, you know, keep showing up really in the ways that you can. And it's allowed me to see that like great work can happen and co-production can be fully equal, and it can, as long as there's, you know, ability and freedom and safe spaces to have that, you can do great work.
Excellent. So Lindsay, would you like to kind of join up on, because obviously you started your research very much with co-production, and it's been a really important shift, I think, in research over the last few years, but I would say we still have a long way to go.
Oh, definitely. I think so. I'd started co-production 2017, 18. So I was doing some patient public involvement, but it might have been more meaningful patient public involvement, but wasn't that sharing of power and decision making all the way through the process. And I soon realised, like in my first proper project like that this is the way I wanted to go. It was so much more meaningful and impactful, and you know, also just providing a base to develop skills for the young people. I trained young people in doing interviews and coding transcripts, and it was just a completely different way, and it felt like so meaningful to me to give back and to be able to have that two-way sort of reciprocal relationship, where I was obviously gaining, you know, much better, more impactful research, but also the young people, obviously prior to the COVID study, was developing real sort of skills in qualitative research. Some went on to do masters and you know, even a PhD actually. So like all that that's what means a lot to me. And then that sort of then had to be transferred into a COVID environment when it was all online. So like that was again completely changed sort of the bar game. I only just started in sort of face-to-face, and then it was then about, okay, we need software to be able to, everyone can access it at the same time. And you know, obviously even in the Nexus project we had the Zoom, being able to share ideas within that format. But it was just anything we could do to additionally give and share power and decision making all the way through. And now obviously Nexus and public engagement is so important to have that two-way interaction with the public. And again, I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone else, but I've thoroughly enjoyed the discussions with the audience this week, being able to really sort of have this rapport about people that are really on board with sort of the co-production elements, and like that they would want to take that, they're even doing it themselves or want to take that into their own work, which has just been absolutely fantastic. And I just saw another question about sort of about the co-production process, and I've already started writing this whole thing up in terms of methods and process, and just again being able to share back to the academic community and young people and clinicians like, in order to do this themselves. So sharing, you know, challenges, learning, recommendations for doing it themselves in the future. So fingers crossed that'll be out in a few months' time, if I've got the time.
That's really helpful. So maybe we are witnessing a paradigm shift, and I'm sort of thinking, Chris, probably you're going to get more busy if this spreads, and I think it probably will, because it's such a wonderful way of kind of communicating really complex issues in a way which is hopefully understandable and will make an impact. So that's really good. We have had some questions whether the discussion will be shared. And I don't know whether Emily can respond to that, or Lindsay.
I think it will be, because with it being recorded, I think it is going to be shared. Emily will definitely know that more than I will, but I thought that was the point of it being recorded.
Emily's just give the thumbs up.
Oh, did she get? Oh, yes, brilliant. Sorry, I didn't see that.
And there's also a link for feedback on the film and the discussion. So it's in the chat. So if people would like to kind of engage, or people who maybe watching the film later on YouTube can engage even after the event. So that's really helpful. So we still have about 10 minutes before we finish. Don't know whether the audience have any final questions, so don't be shy. Oh yes, there was one question. What role does music play in the film? That's an interesting one.
It's interesting that you know, a lot of people actually this week have mentioned the music, which I'm really pleased about, because I think music is often something that you don't really pick up on. It will make you feel an emotion, but you won't necessarily identify that it's the music. And I think, you know, with filmmaking, there's so many different things that are going on to make you allow you to be immersed in the story and feel an emotion. And music is one of those parts, and it's a very important part. And the composer, Johnny Colgan, who I've been working with for a number of years now, just has a real gift for feeling that emotion and reflecting that through music. So you know, it's I'm glad it's been mentioned. I'm glad it's been brought up, because I actually, when I write, I often use music to get myself into that frame of mind, to feel those emotions, and to give me kind of that clarity when I'm writing. So it's kind of integral from the creative process straight through to the final product as well.
That's really interesting. And I suppose the question is, you know, did he get the approval of the young people? There was some. Okay. Well, yeah, music is a very personal thing, isn't it? So I take your point around the story and conveying the emotion, but there are obviously kind of different ways of achieving that. So maybe next time there will be a young person kind of produce music element to it. I'm sure you can get a rap artist or something.
Well, actually, the Will, who plays Matt, is a rap artist.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
wow.
Okay. Yeah, he's very good actually.
Okay.
So look out for him.
Okay. And in terms of another question kind of coming up, how did you choose the actors? We talked a little bit about the casting, but how did you choose which actors to work with?
I mean, I think with the lead actor, that's quite a difficult casting, because you wanted an actor who'd had good experience, but equally you wanted an actor who was young enough, who was part of the age that we were trying to reflect. So we had we auditioned quite a few actors, and they did what's called self-tapes, and then from there we selected the actors that we wanted to share with the wider group, and yeah, from that point onwards, I think people were pretty unanimous that we were going to go for Will, and I think also what was interesting about Will was that he was a really lovely guy. I think everyone's met him now through at the screen. He's a really lovely guy, very sensitive, wanted to be very faithful to the research and to the story that we wanted to tell, and you know, I hope, you know, you saw the emotion that he conveyed, you know, there was quite a few times where he was quite tearful, and he's really feeling that. You know, you can't just switch that on. So he really immersed himself in this project, and he had a real belief in it. So you know, and the acting is so important.
Yeah, that's a well, that was great, and it's fantastic that you found someone like him to portray the feelings and the complexity. So in terms of what next, we talked a little bit more about what next. So wrapping up, what next? Where else are you going to present it? Maybe at the Royal College Conference, maybe schools, maybe school nurses. Where do you think you will take this next? Lindsay?
So that is definitely in the pipeline. We're trying. They're very fully booked at the Psych conference in Liverpool this year. And I think this kind of came on their radar a little bit too late, but we're fingers crossed potentially there might be a little avenue in there. But we're also very thankfully being asked to have a bit of a section in the Great Exhibition Road Festival at Imperial. So that's attended by 10,000 people every year. So I mean, this, again, the details and the plan is still in the pipeline, but it seems quite likely that that's going to happen, and that would be really, really exciting to sort of get that it's a beautiful campus at South Kensington as well. And I think Chris and I, and hopefully some of the young people as well, might be, I haven't actually got to even tell the guys this yet, potentially to speak at this as well at the event. But also we've been on BBC Radio. We're going on tomorrow morning as well, and with Dylan as well, which is very exciting. And Simi and I have been on as well. So I think there's just lots of potential and certainly media interest in this as well. I think it's really sort of highlighted that to us how important maybe what we've been doing is, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Any festivals that might be relevant?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, I think we'll put it into some festivals and
Okay.
maybe some.
Keep fingers crossed for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dylan, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it would be really, really cool to for the film to get some recognition as a film and to be showcased at film festivals and stuff like that, because it really does deserve it. Yeah, so I was just going to add on and say, like, obviously it will be hopefully used as an educational tool and to raise awareness and stigma and stuff, but I think as a piece of art and as a film, it deserves that recognition as well. So hopefully it gets, you know, the recognition it deserves and you know, gets shown all over Cannes Film Festival or whatever. I don't even know, but it would be amazing.
Yeah, that sounds really kind of exciting opportunities. I don't know anything about British Film Institute, but how do you feel about the film being archived by the British Film Institute? I think that's questions for you, Chris. You will know about these things.
Yeah, so this is a real accolade for the film. So the film is going to be archived by the British Film Institute, and it's been identified as a film. It's been identified on the basis of the content of the film, but also the film itself. And the whole idea, these films are archived so that future generations can watch these films and look back on how films were being made at that time, but also what they were reflecting in society at that time. And obviously, you know, COVID is something which is very much going to be part of our history. So it's a lovely feeling to think that, you know, 100 years time, 200 years time, this film will still be being viewed by people. and hopefully there'll still be learnings being made from it.
Well, that's a wonderful way of finishing our conversation. So congratulations to all of you. Well done. And thank you for all of our participants, and all the best with your work in the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Agnes.